Welcome. You are at the CCC,
where there are no outside issues. Hi, my name is Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, digital chaplain, and person in recovery.
My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, 7th year doctoral student in clinical psych. I'm here with my cat, and I'm really excited that he's going to be on the show with us today. And of course, I care about you.
Yes, and I'm Louie Lou, and my pronouns are he and him, and I am in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance.
And each week, we will provide and create a brave space where we engage in conversation around topics of recovery.
Yes, and our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for those people in recovery.
By tackling topics sometimes used to separate us.
But before we do that, like, subscribe, comment, and ding that bell. Ding, 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 ding. And of course, before we even go past that, I need to remind you guys that we don't represent anyone but ourselves. Our opinions are simply our opinions. We are not giving you any mental health advice or life advice, and basically don't listen to us too closely. Yeah?
For entertainment purposes only.
For entertainment purposes.
That's what they say on YouTube, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, for entertainment purposes only. We have a special guest on the show today that I'm really excited to introduce. Min, who are you?
Hi, my name is Min. I am a recovering addict and alcoholic. I'm coming up on 5 years sober.
Woohoo.
Yeah. No fronts.
I'm also an artist. And I CrossFit, and I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
I didn't really prep all of that stuff.
If
That's perfect.
If any of you remember, for a while there was this lovely picture of me behind us, and I was getting trouble. I was getting heat all the time. This is the artist.
Yes.
It was amazing.
Yeah, I recently picked up sewing, and I'm quite good at it.
Oh, nice.
It's like you're gonna be making outfits for us drag queens,
right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Yes.
I would love to.
We'll have to talk.
Here.
Yeah.
So it's been a while since we've been on. So let's do a quick check-in. How have folks been? How's the new year treating everyone?
Pretty good. I'm well. I'm moving into like an apartment
Yes.
like this weekend. So
Hallelujah.
like the nomad life is gone soon. Yeah. So I'm excited about that. I'm still going to be traveling a lot. Like I already have plans to be, like in Chicago in March and in April. I'm doing and for folks who maybe I'm going to be at Spring Clearance, which is like a crystal meth anonymous retreat that takes place in New York.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
And I'll be with Fonda Cox.
That's a fun name.
Has been on the show before. And she and I are going to do like our, why gender isn't an outside issue. That we did last year as well for workshops. So
nice.
really excited about that. How about you?
You know what? So January was kind of bumpy. It was like a roller coaster because with all the rain, and I share with you all, I was struggling with kind of a low-grade depression. It's something that I hadn't felt in a while, and it was really kind of freaking me a little. And so I really leaned into the program. I stepped up my meetings, and I'm always that person who says, I like to be invited, but I'm not going to go.
Right.
But this, I made it a point to go. And now I can tell you that I feel like I'm right in the center of the lifeboat, and I'm experiencing joy in a way that I haven't in a while. And I'm feeling connected, and it feels good. I know it's not going to last completely, but that's it.
Don't shit on it yet.
No,
What are you doing? Just enjoy where you're at.
I'm not shitting on it. What I'm saying is I realize there's balance, there's balance. I'm appreciating this. I'm appreciating this. And I get to also appreciate the struggle, because it's like, if I didn't go through that, I would, if you don't go through those things, you would know to work on other stuff. So yeah. Good.
That's so nice.
And it's so funny that you say that, because like the program has taught me is that when I'm in pain or when something really traumatic happens in my life, I really reach for the program. And, I've tried therapy in general, but I find that the work that we do here in the program is most helpful to me when I'm experiencing a lot of pain. And, the beginning of the year for me was kind of like a shift to my normal routine. For the last couple of months, I've been in this like weird low grade depression that I'm like starting to like understand and be able to put my finger to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was coming out in January, like reinvesting in all of the things that makes me happy again. And then, my boyfriend and I just broke up 2-3 days ago, and it just like this like pound. So I'm carrying a lot of that pain. So I'm trying to make space for that while finding ground for the routine that I was rebuilding, to get back on track. Well, I guess I wouldn't say get back on track. Just, the bright, bubbly summer Min that y'all know and love.
Yeah.
Would you say, Min, this is where you're at right now? Like you're kind of, at least what I'm hearing you say is like you have a little bit of a heavy heart right now.
Very heavy.
Yeah.
Very, very heavy. Yeah.
Well, this is the best place to have a heavy heart because this podcast helped me through my last breakup.
I was telling him before that the three of us, we've come on here and been able to kind of, work on things with, and it's not easy. It's not easy to do it, this publicly, but and it was healthy, and yeah.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
Min, I have to talk about how I'm doing now.
Yeah.
It's Anthony's turn.
It's my turn, Min. So I'm doing really good. You know what I'm realizing, that when I was in the introduction, I lifted up my cat to the camera, but not everyone can see us. So I just want everyone to know that I have a fat orange cat, and he's really sweet, and he's sitting up.
Adorable.
He is adorable. The new year has been fantastic for me. I went back home to Pennsylvania over the holidays. We aired from there. Well, I aired from there. It was, without it being an exaggeration, it was by far the best visit home that I've ever had. I felt so loved and I felt so supported, and I felt very different around my family. And then I learned some like big news. I learned that my dad's not my dad. I know.
And you're laughing about it, so
well, because I've had time to process, but man, fucking 23andMe has shaken up the world. So that's basically how we found out. That's a conversation for another time. I'm being kind of flippant about it because I've had like a long time to process, and my family's still my family,
Yeah.
Right. But overall, this has been a really nice start to the new year. I have a new sponsee that I'm really excited about, and I'm glad to be on air. We have a lot of new and exciting things that we've planned for this year for folks listening in. Min, what were you gonna say?
I forgot.
It'll come back to you, I'm sure.
Yeah. So maybe this is a nice time to transition into our topic today.
You can't.
You
can't use that word. Remember?
No, you know what? I'm gone for a couple weeks and I forget who I am.
Yes.
So today's topic is the newcomer. Inviting the newcomer, the importance of the newcomer. For folks at home who may not be familiar with the idea or the phrase "a newcomer," in 12-step, a newcomer is someone generally described or defined as being in their first 30 days of sobriety from all substances. There are some other groups, for example, that will call someone a newcomer even if they're sober after a few months, but they're just getting out of a rehab. But basically, a newcomer is someone who is new to abstaining from substances or process addictions.
And some folks who have been in recovery for a really long time think that everybody who's under 5 years is a newcomer.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's always the stuff you hear on your milestone. It's like, oh, I got 10 years. Oh, yeah, that's. You don't really get sober until 20 years.
Yeah. That feels like a perfect opportunity to say, what's that phrase? It's an expression. Fuck my drag. Except you've never heard someone say "fuck my drag"?
Fuck my purse. Like, fuck your couch.
Yeah. Wow. I've heard the fuck your drag or fuck my drag.
Fuck my drag. Yeah. Well, except with time.
Gotcha.
So what I think is interesting about the newcomer, at least, not that newcomer specifically, but the idea of the newcomer in AA, at least, in Alcoholics Anonymous, is that, at least theoretically speaking, the newcomer is the only reason why we have meetings. It's like the only reason why we get sober. Do y'all have an opinion about that? It took me a while to wrap my head around that.
Well, especially during like COVID, I got a better kind of handle on it. But yeah, the meetings are so that we can meet the newcomers, so that they know where to find us. Because the work that I do, like the work that I do for my recovery, is me sitting across from someone, me doing writing, me kind of getting in the literature and those things. But those meetings there, like, are for that person who is just not certain how to go, to kind of come and maybe hide out, hear what's going on. I used to think that the meetings are like infomercials for the program.
Yeah, that definitely takes a little bit of like getting used to. I remember like coming to the rooms for the first time, and I had never really heard of AA before. And just like, I mean, I was desperate. So I was like willing to sit through a really weird like thing, like people were saying the same thing at the same time and holding hands, and like there was some weird shit going on, but it was also like really cool too. Like I also heard a lot that made me feel like I was in the right place too.
Absolutely. We have a comment right now. Don. Hi, Don. Welcome back with us. We're happy you're joining us.
Don Lee sent us a quote.
Yeah.
And it's from pages 159 to 160 of Alcoholics Anonymous. It became customary to set apart one night a week for a meeting to be attended by anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. Aside from fellowship and sociability, the prime object was to provide a time and place where new people might bring their problems. Thank you, Don. Don said, I have the receipts. You're not just making it up.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what I love, Don, I'm going to give you some props, because I love those AAs who are all about the history, because it's necessary. I have friends who, like, when in doubt, go to the source. It's there in the receipts, as you put it.
Well, and I think being a newcomer, you are like also, it doesn't feel that way, but like having, I think us being in the program, even any amount of time, knows that like, that's like the best time for us to really, I think, understand like the depths of what our recovery went to, because I feel like every day after that, or like any time after that, you start to forget like maybe what it was like. And so in a lot of ways, and I think it's a very spiritual thing to always approach everything like you're a beginner. So absolutely. I do think that there are moments in recovery, even if we have 2, 3, 10, 5 years, 3 months, that we still can approach our recovery as a newcomer again, maybe because we're going through something new. Maybe we're going through a breakup in recovery for the first time, or we got a terminal illness diagnosis, or something happened that kind of places us in that place of being a newcomer again. I think it's helpful to see that and recognize that.
Yeah. When go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, we have questions for you. So I'm hoping that what you're going to say is going to fit into this, because one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, or we wanted to ask you. So we have 3 questions this year that we're asking all of our guests. Okay. Right. So the first question is, tell us about where you grew up.
I grew up in Vietnam. I was born and raised in Ho Chi Minh City, in this tiny little street right next to my grandma's house. We had this cute little, I remember the black and white checkered square foot. And I just remember, like, I had the most beautiful of childhood in Vietnam. And when we left to come to America, it was because of like some traumatic business thing that my dad was running away from. And we actually was told that we were just coming here for a vacation by my parents. And then when we got here, I realized we weren't going back. And that was like the first time that I experienced like separation and heartbreak and all of the detachment. I remember that feeling being in St. Louis. And it was like a cold August. And then them telling us that we're not going to go back.
Wow. Oh my God, Vietnam to St. Louis.
Right.
Vietnam to St. Louis, Missouri.
And how old are you then?
I was 9.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
Wow. Okay. So then number 2, and hopefully you'll maybe say a little bit about maybe your experience as a newcomer, but what made you get sober?
Oh my gosh. A sponsor of mine said something to me that I just will never forget. He's like, I feel like a dirty rag. And I felt like I was never going to get clean. And I carried that smell and that grossness forever. And I realized like my life was in shambles, but not in the way where I was like jobless or homeless. But I just didn't experience any hope. Like nothing was working. I couldn't cope with drugs. I couldn't cope with buying things. I couldn't cope with looking hotter. And I was just in this place where I realized I was never, ever happy. And I didn't really experience joy. And I felt that heaviness for a very long time. And then my father passed away. And then my sister pulled me aside one day and was just like, hey, you're on that trajectory pretty fast. And then, I listened. So here I am.
Yeah.
All right. And so last question, how do you connect with your higher self, or do you believe in a higher power?
Oh, I absolutely do. I actually believe in the variations of different higher power in general. For me, I believe, like I grew up Buddhist, so there is this Bodhisattva. And so I have statues of her throughout my house and in key places that I can talk and connect with. I think I connect with my higher power the most when I tap into my creativity. Like when I paint, I think like I've been really into painting landscape lately. And every time I paint light or trees or movement, like I feel spirituality in the practice. And then the third way is like, when I need a quick, cheap dose of spirituality, I go outside. Like I think just looking at it, but
I like that quick, cheap dose.
Cheap dose.
Spirituality. It's there.
Just a quickie.
Just
a little buzz.
Yeah. That's really beautiful, man. Just to kind of like get us oriented for folks just chiming in, we have a special guest on today. His name is Min. Identifies as an artist and special things. That's who you just heard speaking. And today's topic is the newcomer. So circling back to what we were talking about before I cut you off, Min, what has folks been, well, actually what's coming up for me is like the last meeting I went to where the newcomer was a topic was at Godbox, and Godbox is the meeting where, people randomly put topics into a box anonymously. And one of the topics that came up was, how do you deal with toxic newcomers? And Patrick, y'all know Patrick. Patrick picked up that question and took it in this very beautiful direction, which was, if you're toxic, you belong here. And if you're not toxic, you belong here.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I have to think about where I am and what I'm doing, if I'm thinking a newcomer is toxic,
I feel like
that might be about
that
me.
says more about that person.
I remember sitting there because it's like, I expect that a newcomer is going to be a little toxic, that is going to have some challenges. And how am I going? The goal for me is like, how am I going to navigate through these things with grace? And so, how I deal with it? I deal with it. I show up and I show them through my example that, you can change. Life can get better,
I think that all newcomers are toxic. They have toxins in their body.
I think most of us are.
They have toxins in their spirituality. They have toxin in their personalities. I mean, I think the program is to detox all of those things, right? And I think, like, isn't that what we do? I remember being the most toxic newcomer. Like, I think Jack would tell stories about like how I would show up to meetings.
Jack's his sponsor.
Jack is my sponsor. That would tell me like when I would show up to meeting, look like I'm going to a circuit party, not talk to anybody, and then make this stink. In general, and
that sounds like Jack.
And then across my arm, and I wouldn't talk to anybody, and I was just like this.
I'm really struggling with the like labeling a newcomer toxic. And I don't think that's just because my understanding of the word toxic. So if there are people who are new to recovery, I think people might not be well, but I think like toxic. When I hear of like toxic to me, just for whatever reason seems like poisonous and just not like, I think of toxic masculinity or, and I just don't think that it's fair or compassionate. And I know that was not our intention at all, but I just would want to say that I think, somebody maybe isn't well, I mean, they're, I don't know. I just don't like the idea of being toxic.
Is it better to say maybe exhibiting toxic behavior?
Because I think I don't know why I don't like toxic.
No, you're reacting the same way everyone at the meeting reacted.
I know, but it's like,
because it felt very pointed at the meeting.
It's not true, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, it's not true in the in a certain understanding. It just the initial thought. And I think especially probably as like a new person, I don't know how well I would have took somebody perceiving me or talking to me as if I was toxic. I was probably already feeling that enough.
Yeah.
So it's like, so I don't necessarily think it's not true. There's just something about the language that makes me go like cringe.
We have a tendency to kind of hold the newcomer with kid gloves because and I'm saying we globally, I'm not, we think that we have enough power.
We don't.
That we have enough that I can make you drink or I can make you not drink. Just like I was, I don't know if I did chips or if it was when I was secretary in the meeting, but my humor, you know how my humor is or whatever. And somebody said, oh, that person's going to go drink and use. I don't have that kind of power. I can't make them do that or whatever.
Then what is our power?
The reality is that I feel like I can show you who I am. I can be who I am, not because I think it's dishonest if I try to tone down or change who I am. Although I'm thoughtful, I try to be thoughtful. And if I don't know you, if we don't have that relationship, I'm not going to come at you the way I would come at Anthony. Right. But no, I'm going to make sure that I am genuine or as authentic as I can be in this.
Agreed.
And I think that's what you can give them. But as far as the other stuff, because it's like, I used to think that when I shared at a meeting, I had to only share about recovery, only share about the good stuff. And because like we said, the meetings for those newcomers, I needed to talk about some of the bad stuff so that they could relate. And I feel like they can relate to me, not if I'm all crystal and pristine, but if I'm showing you me, flaws and all, you know?
Yeah. So it makes me curious, when y'all were newcomers, what worked for you? Like, what were the things that a sponsor, or what were some of the experiences that you had that made you want to keep coming back, or that you still think about today?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing for me was that I saw people like me, and I heard people like me who were having an experience with life that I was struggling to have on my own. So I don't know that, because there were plenty of things that were done wrong or that were distasteful in my mouth, but there were a couple of folks there that just either because they were a fag or they were queer or some sort of like, some sort of connection. And then they had some sort of like different life experience that I was really wanting to have, because I just didn't think it was possible for a person like me, to get results like some of these people were talking about. And so for me, I think that was it more than, I mean, my first sponsor tried to sleep with me. So, you know what I mean? Like there was plenty of quote unquote, like bad behavior. But at the end of the day, it was because there was a little bit, and I think that's what we have, like you said, we just bring our best, we just bring ourselves to the meetings and who know, and let God do the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember it's so funny. The nuggets, I think my first 6 months being in the program, there was just like, everything was hard. Like going to the bar in the morning was hard. Going to the gym was hard. Getting home from work was hard. Work was hard. My life with my family was hard. And I remember going to meetings and hearing all of these people, and then they like would drop little bits of hope that they got sober. And then within that hope, they drop a little bit of strength and then some wisdom. I mean, remember, I would walk away from, I would say 5 of 7 meetings that I went to that week with something else. And I'm like, wow, like, there's apps and things out there that talks about all these affirmation and like, be kind to yourself, be compassion to yourself. But in the meeting, you hear these people with like the most messed up life that like recovered. And then they're showing you how they are compassionate to themselves. Yeah. And you're like, dude, they can do it. I should just listen to them and like pick some of that nugget up for myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's like my world had gotten so small. I was living in this SRO. I didn't have connection with people. I turned my back on my family, all that good stuff. So it was what got me coming back, even if I didn't believe people wanted me there, was having a purpose or a place to go, because I was not employable. I had no life. I had, no hope. It was the thing first. It was eventually not, having a purpose or a place to go. Then it was those folks who were genuinely, and I don't know how it was that I saw it in some people and I didn't see it in others, but they were genuine when they said, come back.
Yeah.
And then they would see you and they'd light up.
Yeah.
And it was like, what's going on here? Nobody. And so, and then the next step, and this, I always talk about this, was that tribe that you find. All of a sudden I had people who were going through the same thing. That we would run together and just be messy together and laugh and whatever. And so, of course, I'm coming back because I want this, you know?
Yeah.
I want to be able to bottle it up and spray it on me before I leave.
And you know, that's why I painted you, right? Because you were one of those people. I found real compassion and sincerity for the first time with like a random man, like that didn't want to try to sleep with me and like was just kind. Like you hugged me and your touch felt sincere.
Oh, I love that.
Oh my God.
I love that because I was trying to hook up.
Well, and I think, you know, part of that is being present with people, but I think there was kind of some magic that also happened outside of the meeting.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, people who were willing to invite me to like dinner or coffee or fellowship afterwards, no matter what,
And not,
you know, even
not
when,
judge me for not
and I
having
might've said
money.
no, but they
Yeah.
still like invited me, you know, I think, you know, people offering me a ride was really helpful at times, you know. I think there are little things that we can do just to be present with people along their journey of recovery, you know,
Absolutely.
like, cause we don't, I think that's an interesting balance too, because you do also have people who try to do too much for the newcomer, you know, and I think we can potentially rob them of the dignity of their own experience.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think that's something to be really mindful of as somebody who's working with a newcomer.
Yeah. Like they have to figure out how to get to a meeting themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think to some degree, right? But I think, you know, I know like a lot, I know for me, when I can get a little giddy or excited when I see a newcomer really kind of in pain, you know,
Yeah.
because I feel like to me, because that's what it looked like for me. You know, I had to show up to meetings and I had to cry and I had to be like uncomfortable. And I feel like that is what took me to getting sober and staying sober, was the ability to be able to sit through some of that pain and those emotions and those feelings that I was just running from for so long. And so I think seeing people, newcomers in pain, you know, that was part of my process. I don't think I'm really anti, like, we have to go through pain to learn shit and to get well. But my experience was I had to go through a lot of pain.
Absolutely. Something that I struggle with, like early on or after a while when I started sponsoring people, is I felt like I needed to be Captain Save-A-Ho for all these newcomers who were being, in my mind, preyed upon by folks all the time. It has taken me a really long time to understand that, you know, everyone involved in that is probably in some sort of jeopardy, but the most important part of that is none of my business. That as much as I want to, it's not my business.
Yeah.
I get to, like I say, focus on what's inside my hula hoop. And it used to cause me some real grief thinking that I needed to save people. Oh, no. I don't have to do that. Again, like I said before, I don't have that kind of power. If you're going to drink or use, you're going to drink or use. You know,
No matter.
Right. I think one of the things that was really helpful for me when I first started sponsoring people was when my sponsor said, you know, you can't want it more than they want it. And I feel like that's something that there's so much, like, looking at things spiritually, there's so much that goes on for me when I'm working with a sponsee, because it's so symbiotic. So like on one end, it's like, oh, I'm learning how to have better boundaries, right? Or I'm learning, or I'm being reminded of like the pain of what it feels like to be new, right? And then conversely, if, for example, I have a sponsee who is being difficult, I get to model what sobriety looks like when you're not taking the bait, you know? And so I think right now, one of the things that I'm really grateful for is that when newcomers come in, like you said, Bonnie Violet, and they are in pain, there's something about that feels very hopeful for me, because I'm like, it wasn't until, like I said, I agree with you. We don't all have to experience pain to learn things, but it wasn't until like I was in so much pain where I had so much to lose that I was like willing to actually stop listening to all my thoughts and feelings.
I don't think
Yeah.
that I agree with you too. I don't think we have to sit through pain, but I think that we get to understand that sometimes we have to go through it. Like, just because I've decided not to drink or use anymore doesn't mean I don't experience it. And so with me, it's been about how can I go through it with as much grace. And I heard early on, it's like, the feelings that I have, even though they're not facts, I get to honor them. I don't shove them to the side and pretend like they don't exist like I did before.
Right.
I acknowledge that they're there, work and because it's in that acknowledgement that I can work on it. Because if I don't acknowledge them and I'm shoving to the side thinking that they're nothing, then I don't get to address them.
What would you say between the three of you? I'm sorry, man, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, between the three of you, like, what would you say is the biggest difference between what you were like when you first came in versus like what you are like now?
Well, I have tits.
I'm so mad. Get out of here.
Now we have to put an E on her.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
You want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I going through a heartbreak right now. I'm able to experience joy, and I am still quite happy. Like, I don't think that, like, I move through my day with hope. Like, I don't know what's going to be in store tomorrow, but I just have this amazing confidence that, like, I can kind of get through anything, and like, I didn't have that. Like, I didn't have that confidence in myself. I didn't love myself. I couldn't, like, it's that joyous whatever slogan that I forget all the time.
It makes me think of that big word. Is it equanimity?
Equanimity, yes.
Right?
Equanimity, the Buddhist idea.
Equanimity, yeah.
Is that a Buddhist thing? My newest sponsor told me that when I first started working with him.
Yeah, it comes from Buddhism. Like, the idea that we can kind of be like a mountain in the face of a storm, where like we're like just solid,
Right. Well, and like for me, that's like having many emotions at the same time.
Yeah.
Like not letting one experience have to take out everything.
Yeah.
I can really agree on that. Like, I think while to that question, like, okay, so the me when I came in, my level of self-esteem, my confidence, my ability to kind of own the fact that I'm lovable, that I can love, that people, gosh damn it, people like me. Like, they was so concerned about what people thought about me, and it affected how I moved through the world. And now I am only concerned about what people think about me because I want to be seen as thoughtful.
Right.
But it does not affect how I do things. So I'm going to take actions that are necessary for me to kind of grow in the way that I need to grow. But I'm no longer affected. Well, I don't want to say no longer, not always. I get out of it real quick.
Right.
That timing. And that's amazing. That's amazing to me because it's like, I feel like that's gotten me closer to my authentic self, to feeling comfortable in my skin, to feeling comfortable around other people.
Right.
And when I think it's infectious. Like, when you feel that way about you, you realize other people are feeling that way about them, and boundaries.
Yeah. Right.
Have you ever done like a 9-step work for your younger self?
No.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't. That sounds amazing.
My I think it was a therapist, and then Jack makes me do it sometimes, and then throughout every time, like every few months or so, we rotate the steps again, and we do the 9 steps to all of the things. Oh, sorry. And we would do 9 steps to my younger self throughout, like the younger child who was, trauma by the moving to Vietnam, the younger child who his mom beat up because he put on a dress, or the younger child that like did all of these things in my addiction and all of that stuff too. Right. And then I made amends, and I forgave myself and all of these things. And, it's just, when you listen to a Newcomer, for me, it's just like, you kind of hear yourself, and like you recognize that small child who was hurting, and then there's like a lot of compassion. So I think like when people genuinely reach out to you as a newcomer, like they show love because they understand where you were, and then they see themselves in you, and then they really do love you because they love that person of themselves that used to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Jack, if you're listening, apparently you're more than just a pretty face.
All right.
Go, Anthony. You were.
I forgot what I was going to say.
I think something that I have besides it's like I have like, for me, I really believe my addiction was a spiritual malady. So I do feel like I have a spiritual way of life, and I want to say God just in like a very broad terms. And that's not to say that I have it all figured out and I struggle with what God is and isn't, and, you know, all that sort of stuff. But I do feel like I'm living a spiritual way of life, which is what I was really missing the most. And to be able to do that as like a trans queer person is just something I didn't even think was possible. And I think I missed the spiritual aspect of my life. So I think for me, that's like one of the biggest changes.
Yeah. For folks listening at home, if you have any thoughts about what it was like for you to, as a newcomer, or if you've had certain experiences that you want to share, please chime in at any time. I think one of the biggest differences for me is that like my word actually means something now. I can remember like before I got sober, like I would tell you I'd be at something and I wouldn't show up. And then if you got upset with me, it was your fault that you were upset, you know? Or like, I remember when people like, they would be like, oh, you need to get a commitment and it'll make you go to a meeting. I'm like, fuck that. I can have a commitment at a meeting and I just won't show up to that meeting and I'll just avoid all those people, you know? And now I'm at this like place where like my word really matters. Like I know that when I say something, I'm going to do it. And if I fall short of like a standard that I'm setting for myself, that, you know, like I can apologize when other people are impacted. You know, I'm living for this conversation because one of the things that's coming up for me is like how much life opens up. Like at least what I've heard across the board from all three of you is that there is this opening up that happens. You know, it's like I didn't realize how much I was shortchanging myself, you know, until I started hanging out with other people who were being really nice to me. And I think the other thing that I remember what I wanted to say is like, I think one of the things that was really helpful for me coming in was that I know I was nuts. Like I know I was hard to be around and people were still tolerant. Like they were still like willing to listen. And I think maybe looking back, like those people, because they never took any of my behavior personally, like they knew I was just in my disease. You know? And, you know, and people invited me back every time I went out. I think that was another big one. Like no one ever shamed me along the way. So we have like about 7 minutes left. Do we each maybe want to share like maybe words of wisdom or advice for the newcomer? Like if somebody is new in recovery, how does that sound? I love that. Yeah. Why don't you start, Bonnie Violet?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think for me, the newcomer, I also want to recognize is not necessarily, as I mentioned before, like somebody who came into the rooms, like I'm often a newcomer. And so whether I'm like I move in recovery or I leave a relationship or I start a new job, I'm a newcomer. And I think one of the best tools that I've found helpful is 90 meetings in 90 days. And that's for folks who might not know that it's just going to a meeting every day for 90 days. It just resets me and calibrates me. It gets me connected, keeps me out of self. And it helps me create a community around me. That's really useful.
Yeah. You know, the things that I've learned in my first 90 days of the program, the gratitude list, the reaching out, the sharing when you don't want to share, all of those things are things that lives with me forever because, you know, as the promises come true, some of those promises goes away. I've had beautiful jobs that I've lost. I fell in love with a man and we just broke up and I'm living through pain, but when I'm going through pain, I still tap into those tools because do the gratitude list because it built that muscle when things are tough, you know?
Absolutely. You know, so I came into recovery as an adult who wasn't adulting. And so the thing that I used to tell myself all the time is, this is not an interruption of your life. This is your life. Because it's so easy to want to compartmentalize. I need a break from recovery. No, all the things that I'm doing and all the things that you will eventually do are for you, and they're going to. So, and to me, that has kind of sustained me.
Yeah.
I think I'm reminded of I think it's from the 12 and 12. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's great pain and great love are our only disciplinarians. We need no others. I think it's certainly been the case for me that it's been through like great love from people in the program that I've been able to grow the most. And it's been in moments when I've had great pain that I've been able to grow the most. And I think before I got sober, there wasn't a context for me to experience great love or great pain, right? Like I would just have those experiences and I wouldn't know what to do with them. You know, like if I thought you loved me, I became infatuated and obsessed and you became the center of my world. You know, if I had great pain, then I like was drinking at it or I was throwing my pain around the room, you know? And so like now I feel like, I think that's the thing that like I would want the newcomer to know is that like that the experiences I've had with great pain and great love, like now have like I now have a way of handling those things, right? Like I think what I'm trying to get to is that things were really confusing before I got sober and things remain confusing now, but the confusion feels so welcomed at this point. You know, it's like it's confusing and like I'm enjoying this ride. You know, I think to what you were saying, Min, it's like I keep hearing you say like, yes, I'm experiencing this pain and there's still joy there. You know, and I think that like that's such a beautiful way of putting what I think happens when you're in recovery. It's like you can have these painful experiences and the world can feel like it's caving in and there's just something inside of us that wakes up. You know? Yeah.
And it's so funny because I think of it like, you know, those confusions are like the really foggy day. You know, before recovery, I couldn't find myself in a foggy day. Now, if I'm in a foggy day, I know where I stand.
Yeah.
I know that I'm in the middle of this fog and I can walk through this fog and I'll be okay. You know, like, and that's the difference.
Yeah. Agreed.
I love that.
One thing that came up that I just want to say real quick too is I think also just like focus on your recovery. Nothing else matters on your recovery. And once you're in your recovery, there's so much of life left that you can do all the things that you might think you're missing out on or you're not going to get a chance at or whatever. Just really try to focus on like getting sober. You have plenty of time, you know, to get on with life after that.
And find your tribe. And what I mean by that, find those people that are going to release you to be who you are. You don't have to be perfect coming in. You don't have to be coming into any sort of recovery. It's going to be messy. It's going to be messy. But when you're around people who kind of don't hold you to unrealistic kind of standards, just allow you to be and love you in spite of just what Anthony was saying. It's like, you know, this is how I showed up. They meet you just where you are, let you be, because eventually you do the work, you stay sober. Some of those behaviors are going to change. Some of them aren't. But it's all good.
There's one other thing. I'm thinking of a sponsee that I have. There's one other thing. I think like there might be people listening in, like a newcomer listening in and thinking like, oh, maybe I don't deserve to be sober. I don't deserve to be happy because of the horrible things that I've done. And I can promise you that there's someone in the rooms that have done worse. Yeah. And that they're living through it. And the other thing that was really hard for me to wrap my mind around was when someone told me like my worst experiences are going to be the things that I use to help other people. Yeah. Right. So I think, I think that's the end of my thought.
Yeah.
I need a few sponsees. So if anyone's looking,
all right.
I'm about to give you one of mine because
girl. All right. I think we need saying goodbye.
Yeah. So it's like the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support. You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Absolutely. And tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. ish Pacific Standard when we go live in our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels.
Yes. And find us on all your favorite podcast sources. And one thing to bring up, if you want to reach out to, again, if you have questions, you have topic ideas, you can do that through the website that we mentioned before. You should be able to do everything you need to do with us there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go to our website and literally there you can find all of our contact information.
Exactly.
Yep.
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop. And Min, thank you so much
Yes,
for coming on. It's been lovely to have you.
Exactly.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right, people. We love you. We'll see you next week.
Ta-ta.